Securing and protecting your data that's stored in Office 365 or any cloud-based environment is a topic that's not taken lightly. So what I want to do here is introduce security and governance for Office 365 services. And in this particular module, I'm going to focus on three key areas: the eDiscovery implementation, data governance considerations, and the secure store configuration. Now, there's often some confusion between the secure store configuration and the secure score option. So I'm going to make sure that you're comfortable with the difference between the two of those. So in this module, in the next module, I'm going to discuss these 5 key areas in regards to security and compliance. The first being eDiscovery, which is the process of identifying and delivering electronic information that can be used as evidence in legal cases. Governance is defined by Microsoft as the set of policies, roles, responsibilities, and processes that control how an organization's business divisions and the IT teams work together to achieve its business goals. The Secure Store is a service that provides storage and mapping of credentials such as account names and passwords, and this is primarily used when accessing external data sources, and this is often configured along with the business connectivity services. And at this point, I'll introduce Secure Score. This analyzes your organization's security based on your regular activities and security settings in Office 365, and it assigns a score to that. So again, we'll talk about that in some more detail. And in the next module, we're going to talk about compliance, which is managed through the Compliance Manager and allows you to track, assign, and verify an organization's regulatory compliance activities that's related to Microsoft's professional services and its cloud services like Office 365, Dynamics 365, and Azure. The last security and compliance option I want to talk about, which is going to be done in the next module as well, is called data protection. Ways for us to protect the data that's stored in Office 365 and monitor whether it's shared or not. And it's country-based and categorized. For instance, the finance information and health information within the US have different requirements than within the UK. So over the next 2 modules, we're going to really drill in to these 5 areas of security and compliance available through Office 365. So let's begin with an eDiscovery introduction. As I mentioned, it's the process of identifying and delivering information used in legal cases. So it could be just a normal document today, but something within that document may be considered a record tomorrow and have legal requirements around that document. When it comes to eDiscovery, there are several components or services within Office 365 we have to be aware of. For instance, Exchange Online mailboxes, Office 365 groups, Microsoft Teams or Skype for business conversations, SharePoint Online and the content stored in there, OneDrive for business sites. All of these have to be taken into consideration when we're talking about eDiscovery. How do we do this? We manage this through the Security and Compliance Center. So I've introduced eDiscovery. Let's talk about Advanced eDiscovery. So Advanced eDiscovery requires advanced compliance add-ons or subscription that includes advanced compliance. Now it's going to include the eDiscovery options that we talked about and the components that we talked about on the previous slide. But now we're going to introduce some additional features. Those features include a way to analyze unstructured data, as well as features to allow us to perform more efficient document reviews, and features that allow us to make decisions to reduce data for eDiscovery. So we're going to actually use more of a summary of the data versus each individual record or document. We access the Advanced eDiscovery from the Security and Compliance Center. We'll be spending some time in there between this module and the next module. We're going to be able to perform searches from within the Security and Compliance Center, and we're going to be able to analyze the results from these searches to determine if there's any information that's being shared that shouldn't be shared, or any information that's being stored that shouldn't be stored. So these are a few things that we'll look at. Now, with that said, we also need to look at data governance and some of the considerations associated with that, because they kind of go hand in hand with the eDiscovery process. And to explain what data governance is, it's a way for us to manage the content through its entire life cycle from inception to deletion, which means we have some different options. We have to look at ways our data is being imported, where the data is stored. Are we creating any retention policies or labels or barcodes? And what do we need to be aware of regarding those policies and labels? Are there any legal requirements for us to retain email of any of our former employees? And if so, how long do we have to retain that information? It also includes monitoring our content. We can capture and review email and third-party communication to see if anything's being shared external to the organization. We can review data governance reports, as well as labeling Activity Explorer. Now, within content monitoring, there's a process called supervision, and that's associated with the capturing and reviewing of email and third-party communications, as well as data governance reports. Now, a couple of other items regarding security. One of them is the Secure Store implementation. This eliminates authentication prompts when accessing external data source. Let's say, for instance, we're going to go out and we're going to access. We have 200 users internal. They're going to access this Oracle database, and they're going to bring this information from the Oracle database into a list inside of SharePoint. What we don't want to do is set up 200 credentials for those users to be able to access that content. So that's where the BCS service and the Secure Store service come into play. The BCS is used to establish a connection to that external data source, where the Secure Store service is used to store these credentials. So what we do with the Secure Store is we configure two things. We configure the target application containing the external data source, and we configure the connection credentials so all 200 users can use those credentials to access that content that's remote. The user's login credentials that they use to log in and that they're using to access SharePoint are not going to be the same ones that are going to be used to access that external data source. What we're going to do is we're going to map a group of users to an individual login, and we're going to store that individual login inside of the Secure Store, and we're going to map that information, that login information specifically, to that data source through the business connectivity services. And by doing so, it will eliminate any authentication prompts when they're accessing that external data source.